For the past year, Cash Cobain has been on a run, and it looks like it's going to continue to happen. And he's been on fire ever since I heard him on a song that he featured with Chief Keef. It was doing pretty well on TikTok, and I didn't really think too much of it. But that was at first, until I realized this. You know, at first I thought he was some new producer that was just getting put on, and he had a lot of good connections, and he was just trying to start making a name for himself, and this was the song. But I could not have been more wrong, and I didn't understand the amount of respect and how much he was known in the New York hip-hop scene, especially within drill. You see, for many years now, New York has been known to have this identity crisis, and many longtime fans of hip-hop will tell you that New York has had this problem for a while.
New York is so detached from their roots. Like when you come to New York now, it's drill. You know, you got kids using like southern slang words. The kids are who they're influenced by, but there is a resurgence of lyricism, but it's actually not coming from New York City. It's coming more from like Buffalo.
Ever since like the 2010s, a lot of people would say that New York doesn't have its own sound. It doesn't really know itself anymore. And it really just latches on to other sounds and doesn't really create anything of its own. A lot of people have noticed that a New York artist will pop off and they'll usually leave the state because they don't get a lot of love from the radio stations there. And a lot of locals will say that New York doesn't really have much love for its own artists.
Other things were happening too. The internet was coming on.
You said what? Hold on.
Labels didn't want to sign New York artists' music, right? At that time, New York began to fall off. Other things were happening too. The internet was coming on. Labels didn't want to sign New York artists because they didn't want them beefs coming on their doorstep. Even today, right now, today, it's hard for a New York artist to get a record deal. The record labels right on the street.
Facts.
The reason you can't get a record deal is because the record labels have been burned so many times by getting extorted by street niggas in New York.
Not just extortion.
Clearly, right? Getting punked in clubs. So they like, why do I
go deeper, Ebro? Tell the truth.
But it really seems like the internet and Cash Cobain will be able to save that. I mean, even for a while now, drill has kind of given New York its own sound. Even though the name derives from Chicago drill, New York drill is an extremely different sound than what Chicago was prior. Now, if you don't know who Cash Cobain is, you either are just out of the loop or you just haven't been exposed to him too much, especially his viral song Fisher that he had like about 2 months ago, and the new track that he has with Don Toliver and Charlie Wilson. And yes, I mean the Charlie Wilson. And before we start getting more into Cash Cobain that we know now, the more modern version of him, let's take a surface level look at what he was doing up until now. Cash Cobain grew up in the Bronx borough of New York City, and he's been making music for the past 10 years. He's been connected to a lot of New York artists within the scene for a while now, and a lot of people that are within that scene and listen to that music know who he is and has known who he is for the past couple years. He used to go by the name Slizzy, but then eventually he would come up with Cash Cobain off the dome one day. Cash has been making music for a long time, so one of his earlier credits that I was able to look up and see was from an artist named Flea on the song Conversate, and that was all the way back in 2016 after the rise of the mumble rap era. He even has a placement with Lucky all the way back on his Free Wave 3 project that came out in 2019. I'm not a fan of these other artists like that, but he's also done music with Shawnee Bin Laden, Central C, and even Chow Lee. And then in 2021 he's seen working with Yachty, being credited on songs like Cortex from Yachty and also the Birthday Mix 6 that Yachty did in 2021. I wasn't a really big fan of that project like that for many reasons, but sometimes Yachty albums can be hit or miss. But for a long time, Cash has been a huge fan of just music in general. I mean, the music speaks for itself. I mean, a lot of his inspirations were like Michael Jackson, Aaliyah, Jay-Z, and his favorite rapper is 50 Cent. And a lot of his producing inspiration comes from Pharrell and Kanye, who are undeniably really well at crafting the beats that they make. Specifically, their sampling ability, which if you're a fan of hip hop, you know that sampling are the roots of hip hop. And even though I don't really agree with anything that Kanye says nowadays, and I mean anything, You can't deny his sampling ability and what he has done in music, but nevertheless, he draws a lot of inspiration from both Pharrell and Kanye, which is not a bad start. Cash in a lot of his interviews doesn't really talk about his upbringing and how he really started in music, but he just says a lot of the time that he was around and he was just outside, just in the music scene, constantly just being around talented people and just making his way up. But to me, it wasn't until he met Yachty that things started getting better for him. And that's not to say that Yachty is the one that made him or Yachty is the reason that he's in the position that he's in now, but Yachty did open a lot of doors for him. And we've seen that a lot within the past few years, what the Yachty stamp can do for you. Yachty typically brings in people that he enjoys listening to and he works with them and collabs with them. And eventually he opens doors for them that they probably never thought they would be able to get. But in that same year that he met Yachty in 2021, he would tell his friends that they had to take over the music world. And he set out to make that point happen. And by 2023, he was on his road to doing just that. He was making good traction, still making more connections, and eventually was able to get on Drake's For All the Dogs project. But then this really incredible thing happens to him. And by his own merit too, in early 2024, this year, he drops his song For Sure. And then he gets on From the Block YouTube channel. And after that, people start posting it crazy on TikTok and it just goes viral from the first day. And from my perspective, from what I've been seeing on TikTok and from New York, a lot of people have been enjoying the song. It's been playing like crazy in the streets. It's been almost overplayed at this point, but it's still a good thing for Cash. Now, at first, a lot of people complained about the buildup that got to the verse, but when it finally came, a lot of people really enjoyed it. Now, me myself, I kind of hate long intros. I think it doesn't ruin a song, but sometimes I just want you to get to the point. But to me, I think what really made this song go off was the video From the Block. Actually seeing the crowd, seeing everybody dancing, seeing that crescendo up until they actually started rapping on the beat made it that much better. It was very theatrical in a sense, if you get what I'm saying. And from there, it seems like Cash is doing what he set to do since 2021, and that's to take over the music world. And it isn't stopping anytime soon from what I can see. Now, you guys let me know down in the comments, is Cash COBAIN the new face of New York hip hop or the music world itself? Or is he just another moment in the history of music? Is his fall off like other artists just inevitable, or will he just be in the game for the long run?